The train station was loud in the way only places full of strangers could be. Shoes scraping against concrete, distant announcements echoing off high ceilings, the hum of lives moving past one another without ever truly meeting. Daniel Harper sat on a cold metal bench near Platform 7, his hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. He hadn't noticed. His attention was fixed on the small boy beside him, swinging his legs back and forth, humming softly to himself. Daniel's life had narrowed down to moments like these. Waiting, Ethan Harper was 7 years old, small for his age, with wide brown eyes that noticed everything and a heart that felt far too much. Daniel worried about that heart more than anything. Since Ethan's mother, Claire, had passed away 3 years earlier, it had been just the two of them. No grandparents nearby, no siblings to help, just a single dad doing his best and a boy learning the world could be unfair far too early. Daniel glanced at the clock overhead. They were heading to the city hospital for one of Ethan's regular checkups. It wasn't serious, at least that's what the doctor said, but the anxiety never fully left Daniel's chest. He had already lost one person he loved more than his own life. The fear of losing another lived with him like a shadow. That was when he heard the voice, soft, careful, almost apologetic. "Excuse me, sir." Daniel looked up. A girl stood in front of him, maybe 16 or 17 years old. She had dark hair pulled into a loose braid that fell over one shoulder and eyes the color of storm clouds, beautiful but heavy with something unspoken. She balanced herself on a pair of metal crutches, and beneath the hem of her jeans, only one leg reached the ground. The other pant leg was pinned neatly at the knee. For a brief second, the noise of the station faded. "Can I sit here?" she asked again, gesturing to the empty space on the bench beside Daniel. Ethan looked at her first, his eyes curious but kind. Daniel followed his gaze, then shifted slightly, making room. "Of course," Daniel said. The girl let out a breath. She didn't seem to realize she'd been holding. She carefully lowered herself onto the bench, placing her crutches beside her, her movements practiced but still tinged with caution. When she was settled, she stared straight ahead, hands folded tightly in her lap. Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel nodded, then returned his attention to Ethan. He thought that would be the end of it. Just another brief encounter with a stranger, another face that would fade into memory by the end of the day. He was wrong. For several minutes, none of them spoke. Trains came and went. People rushed past. Ethan swung his legs and hummed, occasionally glancing at the girl with open curiosity. Finally, he leaned toward his father and whispered, not quite softly enough, "Dad, what happened to her leg?" Daniel stiffened. Before he could gently correct Ethan, the girl turned toward them. Her expression wasn't angry. It was tired. "It's okay," she said. "People ask all the time." She looked at Ethan and offered a small smile. "I lost it in an accident when I was 10. Ethan's eyes widened. "Did it hurt?" She nodded honestly. "Yeah, a lot." "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice sincere. Something flickered across the girl's face, surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "Thank you," she replied. "This is my son, Ethan." "Hi," Ethan said, waving enthusiastically. The girl hesitated, then said, "I'm Lily Morgan." They sat together in silence again, but it felt different now. Softer. Less guarded. After a moment, Lily glanced at Ethan. "Where are you two headed?" "The hospital," Daniel answered. "Routine checkup." Lily nodded. "And me too." That explained the crutches, Daniel thought. Or maybe it didn't. He stopped himself from assuming. Assumptions had a way of hurting people. A loudspeaker crackled overhead, announcing another delay. Groans rippled through the crowd. Ethan slumped against Daniel's side. "I'm tired." "I know, buddy," Daniel said, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. Lily watched the interaction closely. There was something in her eyes, an ache, maybe that Daniel couldn't quite place. "You're a good dad," she said suddenly. Daniel blinked. Ina blinked. "I'm sorry, I can tell," she continued. "The way you look at him, like he's your whole world." Daniel swallowed. "He is," Lily nodded slowly, then looked away. For a while, they talked about small things, school, the weather, how terrible the station coffee was. Lily laughed softly when Ethan made a joke about doctors always having cold hands. For the first time since she'd sat down, she seemed almost relaxed. Then the conversation shifted. My mom used to bring me here," Lily said quietly, staring at the tracks, before everything. Daniel didn't interrupt. "She died 2 years ago," Lily continued. "Cancer?" "I'm sorry," Daniel said immediately. So am I," Lily replied. "It's just me and my dad now." "Well, kind of. I know." Danced there was more, but he waited. "He works a lot," Lily said. He says it's to pay the bills, but I think he just doesn't know how to look at me without seeing what I lost. Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel felt a familiar ache in his chest. Grief recognized grief. That's not easy, he said gently. Quite Blair, no, Lily agreed. And neither is being looked at like you're broken all the time. Ethan frowned. You are not broken. Lily turned to him, startled. My mom says people are different, not broken, Ethan continued. Oh well, she used to say it. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. He hadn't expected Ethan to mention Claire. He never knew when the memories would surface or how deeply they would cut. Lily's eyes filled with tears. That's really nice, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The train announcement echoed again, closer this time. Their train would arrive soon. Lily picked up her crutches and stood carefully. This is my platform, she said. Daniel stood as well, instinctively offering an arm in case she needed it. She hesitated, then accepted his help. As they waited, Lily took a deep breath. Oh, can I tell you something? She asked. Of course, Daniel replied. She looked directly at him now, her eyes shining. When I asked to sit here, I was really scared you'd say no. Daniel frowned. Why would I? She laughed weakly. Because people do. All the time. They don't want to be uncomfortable. Or they think I'll need something. Or they just don't want to deal with me. Sunil felt a surge of anger on her behalf. I'm glad you asked, he said firmly. You're always welcome to sit. The train roared into the station, wind whipping around them. Lily wiped her eyes quickly. Or answer. It meant more than you know. Before Daniel could respond, she hugged him, quickly, awkwardly, but with a depth of emotion that caught him completely off guard. Then she hugged Ethan too. Thank you, she whispered. As she boarded the train, Daniel watched her go, his heart heavy and full all at once. Ethan looked up at him. Dad? Yes? I think she needed us today. Daniel smiled sadly. I think you're right. They boarded their own train moments later, the station disappearing behind them. Daniel didn't know if he'd ever see Lily Morgan again. But he knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the smallest kindness, a simple yes to an innocent question, could change someone's day or even their life. And as the train carried them forward, Daniel held his son a little closer, reminded once again that compassion cost nothing, but meant everything.